Hello, lovers and friends. This is the 6th episode of Popcorn Fodder. Pew, 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 pew. And this week we are going to be reviewing the movie called Sitting at Bars with Cake or Sitting in Bars with Cake. One of the two. But yes, it is a tearjerker of a movie, and be prepared to hear my brother and I get a little choked up at the end of this episode. It was, yeah. So, let me not waste your time any further. Let us get into this week's episode. Hello, lovers and friends. So, this episode we are discussing Sitting in bars with cakes. We just finished watching it. Maybe still in our feels. You know, sniff, sniff, sorrows, prayers. But jokes aside, I appreciate that this movie is based on a true story. So before we go too far, let me give you the synopsis. The story follows these two friends, one on the eccentric side of life, one is a little more atypical and shy, type vibes, following the parents and their advice and basically just living life for their parents and not really feeling comfortable expressing themselves, whereas the more eccentric friend, kind of doesn't really think before acting. They're a little more on the wild side, and they make a perfect pairing. And the eccentric friend then decides to encourage, her friend who loves baking cakes and is really passionate about it, to encourage them to bring cakes to bars in the hopes of, meeting a guy. And, the cake works as, something to break the ice, basically. And while they're cake barring, they make a list of 50 cakes that they'd like to do. And, each week they go to a different bar, have a different cake, so on and so forth. And in the middle of that adventure, the eccentric friend is diagnosed with brain cancer. And while it starts off, looking hopeful, things quickly deteriorate, and the story kind of follows how the one friend, takes care of her friend, the family dynamics and all of that, and eventually everything leading up to the friend's death. And we quickly sort of cover how the remaining friend, is inspired and has learned so much from their friend, that they, decide to step out of their shell, live life for themselves, and pursue their passion in baking instead of the career that their parents had set out for them. So, yeah, that's kind of how the movie goes. Before going to Mahal, I think the main thing in the movie is at some point you can sort of tell that the friend is going to die. And I think I was very invested in the black lady's storyline, that I figured that, if I thought that maybe the story was going to, the friend was going to die in the middle of the movie, and how then the rest of the movie would follow how she then tries to navigate life, without her friend and all of that. But then sort of seeing the dedication at the end of the movie, I then understand how the movie is in fact about the friend with cancer, and how the movie is dedicated to them and is more so speaking to the impact that that person had on the people around them in such a short period of time. So yeah, that's it. Mahal, any thoughts?
Not much, really. I in relation to the watching experience, it was very nice. Obviously, yes, there was that aspect of something terminal has to happen, because the movie is based off of like a real story and all that, and more often than not, the stories that get picked up for films are the ones that end with somebody dying. You know, hence for the inspirational point or plot. But I liked it. It's very real. That in the parts that like obviously are based off of their relationship, there's obviously gonna be a little bit of conflation, changing up for the sake of movie purposes, but it's still for the most part very realistic relationship wise, and the kind of responses and discussions you would have with your friends in such a situation seems very much real or realistic. Um, so for me, that's what I enjoyed about it. So yeah, there wasn't much. I did cry.
Okay, all right. Um, so did I. Loki, I got teary eyed, but like I said in the previous episodes, where like dogs, siblings, besties,
Yeah.
those stories get me every time.
But I thought you said people could kick a bucket.
If they're just gen pops, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
But if there's some sort of relationship between them, husband and wife, no. No, I don't want to hear about it. Unless the husband and wife are also besties.
I like up.
Yeah,
Okay.
like up. You know? But just you guys happen to sign a certificate and you guys are married? No. I'm not going to lose a tear over that.
That's fair.
Also because I watch a lot of crime shows, you know, and the spouse is always the suspect. So
True.
really, you know, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So it got me all teary-eyed because I was thinking of my own best friend and like if I had to lose my best friend and especially to be there and like watch them struggle with such a terrible disease, it's like I can't imagine myself having to lose my bestie.
And be there in the process.
And be there and like I guess I'd rather be there than not be there.
True.
But also
Why does it need to happen?
just the pain, yeah. Like I'd rather there not be an option of be there or not be there. Do you get what I mean?
You know?
So yeah, I think in thinking of like my bestie and sort of how they interacted, I think the actresses did a really great job at like portraying the closeness of their relationship, and that like deep connection that they had, which made their relationship so believable, which then obviously made it worse for those of us who were crying.
So difficult.
Because I think the part, and I'm going to skip ahead here, but my memorable moment is where she crawls into bed at the end and tells her friend that she can rest now. Ugh. I'm getting all teary-eyed thinking about it now because I'm thinking of like family members who were really sick for a long time and how at some point you do kind of have to release them, that sometimes they're holding on because they think you won't be able to handle their passing, you know? And low-key, you won't. But, you know, there's kind of like that selfishness of trying to will someone who's in that amount of pain and suffering, trying to will them to stay, you know? And you kind of have to get to that moment where you're just like, it's okay. It's okay. Me missing you does not supersede the amount of pain that you're in. And I need to face that demon, then force you to face this pain, you know? So, yeah, I think for me, that was like a moment that really hit me in my chest. Because it spoke to, I think, very personal experiences of my own. And like you said, Mahal, I think like the main thing that I agree with you on is the fact that it is very real. There's nothing sort of fantastical about it. It's very simply shot. Because the message in and of itself is, is enough. That you don't have to, spruce it up with extra zoom lens, wild transitions and, that it's just an honest story told simply. And yeah, for that I gave it a 4 out of 5. I don't think anything will really be a 5 out of 5. A 5 out of 5 for me is a movie that...
Everything Everywhere All at Once, for me. It's teary, but it also has a message.
I can watch it again.
Exactly.
That's, for me, a 5 out of 5 would be a movie that I'd be happy to watch again. For me, that's Black Earth Rising. It's not a movie. It's a series on Netflix.
A limited series, but it was really good.
It was really good, and I've watched it several times since then. But stuff like that, Everything Everywhere All at Once also is a movie I wouldn't mind watching again. Parasite.
Apologies.
Parasite is a movie that I'd watch again, Yeah, but I'm not necessarily someone who particularly enjoys watching movies again and again or shows again and again, but that's what would qualify as a 5 for me. So if I give a movie a 4 out of 5, it's still pretty fucking good. I'm just not going to sit through it again, and it's not necessarily in a bad way. I think for this one, if I'm in the mood for a good cry.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, no.
Oh, God.
Still. No, I watched Lion King.
Oh, right.
Lion King 1. If I want to cry, that's the one. And if you listen to the previous episode where I said I wasn't sure if this movie was going to turn into Lion King 1 or Lion King 2, well, now we know.
Was that technically either?
Well, yes, because it made me cry.
Oh. So
Lion King 2. I hate Lion King 2.
People love Lion King 2.
I don't know why. For me, it's Lion King 1 and Lion King 3.
The Timon and
Pumbaa. Dig a tunnel. Anyway, Lion King 3 bangs. Okay, Lion King 3.
The Timon and Pumbaa story?
The Timon and Pumbaa story, also known as Lion King 1.5.
Oh, yeah.
That is the one. I don't want to hear anything about whatever the fuck happens in number 2.
Yeah, with Scar's kid, I believe.
He's having a whole crisis. I know, and Simba's child, Scar's child and Simba's child fall in love, which is incest, and we never discussed this.
Well, for animals, isn't that basically just forced? For certain animals, due to...
I get it, but we've anthropomorphized these animals.
Sure. There are furry cons related to them.
And you want to tell me... Okay, I'm not gonna because...
It's not the movie we're discussing.
It's not the movie we're discussing. So anyway, sorry, I've hogged the mic for too long. So, Mahal, tell us.
Yes, Lebo.
Ratings.
My rating is 4.5.
Okay.
Yes, ahead of you in heaven.
I told you I'd rather be outside. So... It's Gucci.
Are we waving for you? Are we waving at you from inside the club? It's
with
fine.
all the other whores like yourself. And I'll be happily outside.
You're next in line.
No, I'm not.
You said...
because why? I'm philanthropic. And I'm going to let other people skip the line.
Oh, wow. Because it gets you towards heaven plus one.
No, Mao, it
HD
doesn't.
heaven, premium
It just means I'm just waiting for the concentration of you bitches to thin out. I want it to thin out a little. So I'm going to let more people in so that it's not concentrated, diffusion, osmosis, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I'll pop in.
So you're treating us like auras.
Basics, like a tea bag.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's how they taught diffusion and osmosis. Osmosis was with a tea bag. Diffusion was with a can. A spray can.
Anyway, my rating
Why? Because diffusion is from a high concentration to a low concentration.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the can is hella concentrated with the aerosol spray.
Okay.
And then you spray, and then it spreads throughout the room and eventually thins out.
Okay.
So you can barely smell the potpourri glade spray that you use to cover the smell of poops. And yet somehow the concentration of the poops particles is still very high. But the potpourri, though, as much as it singed your nostrils on first impact, it has since dissipated into nothing but a fantasy. And you are left with only the mere scars of the first spray and nothing else. And those scars that are left in your nose hairs are being soothed by the smell of the poops you try to cover. Anyway, and then the tea bag is from a low concentration. You know, so the water basically doesn't have any tea action in it, but as it passes through the permeable membrane, or semi-permeable, or whatever, then, you know, it starts to suck the tea out of the leaves, or whatever. I don't know. Okay, Maha.
Who's sucking on tea bags?
It's just basically gonna absorb. Yeah. That's a science lesson that I have no idea how it related to this situation.
Neither do I. Oh, because you were talking about how you're going to diffuse us in heaven.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because of your shady rating system.
Okay, to be fair, my shady rating system is just a lot more generous than yours. I'm sorry that I give.
I don't know why you're on this campaign to paint yourself as more generous than me. Why? Why is that something that you need to do? I think that's the question that we need to be asking ourselves.
The question
but we'll ask that question off air. Because right now, I'd like to know your memorable moment.
My memorable moment was definitely that Betsy bad. Because
the what?
When she crawls into bed with her and says,
okay.
you don't have to. So, but other than that, okay. Other than that, my memorable moment would be when she bakes the cake afterwards. I don't know, something just about the fact that she chooses to practice celebrate her friend's birthday and continue like her memory, as if not to say that she never left, but to almost acknowledge that she's no longer there, but still in a part of her. You know,
she's still alive in some way.
She's still alive in some way, and like her story, like you said earlier, that this entire movie is dedicated to her telling her story. That her story ended when she inspired me to be more. You know, that's the vibe that I got from it. You know, to continue baking, to continue following my dream and everything. So that to me was a memorable moment because it had a really good ending message. So yeah. Yeah. I agree. It was a beautiful story. But I think that's it from us. Our next movie is a movie that refuses to let us see it. We've tried so many times to watch it, and each time something derails us. Okay. You don't know the pun? The pun doesn't make sense right now, but it will. Will it?
It really will.
Well, they're not going to see it, though. Well, they might have watched it.
It's a key element to the plot. We will discuss it.
That is true. But
anyway, that's it from us today. We will see. What is the name of the next movie, actually?
I'm not entirely sure. Let me just check quickly. Backtrack. Yes. It is a 2015 film.
Oh, damn.
Oh, my goodness.
That explains the visuals. That explains why we have to watch it with maximum brightness. In a very dark room.
It needs to be the light sauce.
Yeah, but anyway, that's it from us. We will see each other next time. From me and our lovely guest, please share your socials with us.
It's everywhere at Chowdsta. CHOWDSTA.
Childster Lovers and Friends. That's Instagram, TikTok,
Yeah.
and Gmail.
Gmail.
I don't know. What other app is there? Facebook.
No. Oh, goodness, no.
Twitter?
Okay, never mind. Let me say it.
Oh, yeah.
Twitter.
Okay.
Or if you used to call it X.
Snapchat.
No, I don't use that.
To go.
No.
WhatsApp.
Why?
WeChat.
I used to have it, but no.
Oh.
I lost my train of thought. Twitter, Instagram.
Derailed. Anyway, sorry.
Let me backtrack. No, it's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Main on YouTube.
Check out the YouTube channel.
I haven't posted in 2 years, but coming soon.
Bangs.
For the view.
Bangs from the east, bangs to the west.
It's not completely at the west though.
You're in the Western Province right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and support this young, talented individual's work. They're a great photographer, studied cinematography. They do color grading and editing and the whole shebang. I mean, they forgot to mention they're also Charleston on LinkedIn. So no, I'm joking. They're not Charleston on LinkedIn, but they are qualified, accredited. Okay?
Does this count as doxing?
No. Booked and blessed, but not too busy to take your requests. Alrighty.
What about you? What about your socials?
What about me? Obviously, my socials are not high right now because I'm struggling with social anxiety.
The names.
I go by many names. It depends on whether I feel
The
safe.
social media name for this podcast specifically.
Yeah. Speaking of, when you're out in the streets, lovers and friends,
At Monotonous Cacophony.
do not hand out your real name. Do not hand out your real name.
Yes.
No matter how common you think your name is, they will find you. Anyway, what you do need to find is Monotonous Cacophony. You spell it how it sounds.
What about the underscore between?
However you put it in.
Oh, wow.
You will see. It will pop up. Monotonous. Have you Googled?
I've Googled it 3 times.
And what pops up?
Nothing. Well, except when I go to Instagram, then it pops up. But then, no.
So
but
then,
the thing is, I have to, when I Googled the first time, some other random account popped up. And I followed them for a week.
support them as well. Don't we all need a
They
little oven?
posted 3 years ago, I don't think.
We all need a little oven, okay? But yes, it's monotonous_cacophony on Instagram. monotonouscacophony@gmail.com if you want to send a little life crisis
Movie
advice.
requests.
Movie requests, yes. At some point soon, there will be a YouTube. Oh, by the time you hear this, there will be a YouTube. So that'll be Monotonous Cacophony. And yeah, wherever you look, just type in Monotonous Cacophony. It's either just me or me and an account that was around 3 years ago. Alrighty.
Oh, yeah, true.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I know, right? I know. You weren't expecting to get all up in your feels, but here you are, 1:45, messaging your best friend, letting them know that you love them, you know? And why not? I think it's important that we let the people that we love know that we actually love them. We shouldn't be saving these sweet words and, thoughtful sentiments for people's funerals. We need to celebrate people while they're alive, celebrate our relationships with them while they're alive and don't leave things unsaid, you know. But not to the point of obviously like consuming someone, you know, where they feel like they're living for you. There's a lady at the church I used to attend when I was younger, and a really old lady who had a daughter who was mentally challenged and had like a disability that left her sort of mentally stunted at a particular age. So even though her body continued to age and she got older physically, mentally she didn't. So her mother was a primary caregiver. And this woman is like now in her 40s, you know, and her mother was, you know, in her 70s or something. And the 70-year-old woman is looking after, technically, mentally, a toddler, but physically, you know, a toddler the size of a 40-year-old woman. So it's a lot to handle. And this older lady is also really petite. And she would be quite sickly, but never too sick. And yeah, I never knew how she did it. And she would always have a smile on her face and always be, you know, all chipper and stuff. Yeah, and several years later, after I'd left the church, I didn't sort of like leave the church because I had an issue with the church. I just moved and left. So I was no longer attending the church. And, you know, my mother and I are chatting, and she brings up the fact that the daughter had passed. And it was really sad, but she had been sick for some time and she passed away. And literally later that week, the mom passed away too. She had been sick for years. She had been sick for years, battling, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak out of turn, but she was battling a chronic disease that was really sort of eating away at her. And most people with her condition wouldn't have lived as long as she had. But there was no one else to take care of her daughter. And I think that is what sort of willed her to keep going. And the moment her daughter passed, it's almost as if like she could finally just let go and exhale. Yeah, and I find that to be terribly sad, but also really beautiful in some way. And why am I saying all of this? I'm saying this just because I feel like, to the extent to which we are able, we should love the people that we love and let them feel our love. But also let them know that like we will be okay, you know, that their love will live on forever in us, in the same way that we trust that their love for us will live on forever. I don't ever want to put someone in a position where they suffer through life because they think that I cannot cope without them. But I do want that person to know that my life was made better and was enriched by their existence. And I think there's that line sometimes that you have to sort of cross, especially when you're really closely, you know, bound to someone, you know, like a best friend or a spouse, where, you know, those interdependencies, you know, kind of slip in unnoticed. So yeah, I think that's a really beautiful thing. Without making this intro very long, the show that I'm going to recommend for you this week is called The Inside Man. It can be found on Netflix and should not be confused with the movie that has Denzel Washington in it. This one has Stanley Tucci as the bad guy, which is really interesting because Stanley Tucci usually is like, you know, the flamboyant side character. But lately they've really been in some, you know, beautifully written stuff. They've been the main character of like really interesting stories. And I love that for them because I think they really do deserve it. They really commit for the characters that they play, and they play them so well as well. It's so believable. Whatever character I've seen Stanley Tucci play, I've believed him in every one of those roles. And that's, I think, that is the essence of being an actor, right? That transformation, to leave yourself behind and to completely embody someone or something else. And he does that well, especially in the show. But I guess my takeaway from the show is this idea that my dad oftentimes mentions, which is when we are quick to judge people and the decisions that they make in certain situations, and we tend to tell ourselves that, oh, I would never, even like with the story where, a mother kills all her children, or something silly like taking your boyfriend back 500 times, after he cheats on you again and again and again and again, and you tell yourself, you watch someone else go through that and you say, oh, I'd never be that stupid of a woman, I'd never do whatever, what kind of mother does that? And my father always used to say that, like, you really never know somebody's like threshold for suffering, and you just don't know what it would take for you to do that, because we are all capable of doing really horrific things. As human beings, it is in us to do some horrible things, to each other and to ourselves. That history shows us that there is no limit to how far we will go to torture and kill, and induce suffering in other people's lives. Like we do it to each other. We have done it to each other, and no one person is above it. And how maybe as individuals we have more of a tolerance, that for me, I can tolerate a bit more suffering, or I haven't been exposed to that much suffering, that I've lived a sheltered life and therefore have not had to, test my limits. Whereas other people who've been exposed to a lot more things, or who have less of a tolerance, that, they have reached that point where this decision makes sense. Yeah, and I think that that's basically the essence of The Inside Man, that a character who means well, who is a do-gooder, a respected member of society, someone who you would think, oh, they could never do such a thing, they would never. And how every horrific choice that they make makes sense and is justifiable in the context, and you're still rooting for this person who is doing horrific things, because in the context in which they are making these decisions, it makes sense, right? That they had no choice, really. But again, we tell ourselves, oh, they would never, but they can. They just haven't been given the opportunity to do so. And when they were given the opportunity to do so, they did. And yeah, Stanley Tucci's character does a really good job of pointing that out, while also telling a very interesting story, and was suspenseful from beginning to end. I loved it. I love a little mystery, crime, drama, solving this, that, and the other, and the way the story is told as well, how they cut from Stanley Tucci being sort of interviewed in jail to the story with the guy who's also in Broadchurch and was also Doctor Who. How, all of that plays into each other, and it's like these two separate stories that eventually converge at the end, and it is beautiful. So yeah, I've spent 10 minutes now on this outro. I think the longest outro I've ever had in my whole entire life, and I promise not to have outros that are this long. But yeah, I think the movie that we watched had me in my feels, and this show recommendation really had me thinking, because there's this question that Stanley Tucci keeps asking repetitively, And it definitely had me thinking and looking at the people around me a little differently, you know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you have seen it, let me know. If you plan on seeing it, let me know. And yeah, just comment below. See you next week. Bye.